Right, so this is my acid bath. It's a, I don't know, probably about 3 or 4 litres this would hold. I've just got a bit of flat sheet lead, which is a bit of scrap, that's why it's that shape. There's no reason for that shape. That just comes down the side and goes into the bottom, and I've just got it bolted into the side just with a nut and bolt, which I'll put the electrode on when we start the actual anodising process. The reason I've got that bolted through the side is so I can still get the lid on this when I'm not using it. So what I'm going to do is put this into the sink, which I've got about a quarter filled with water. Now the reason I put it in a sink full of water is when you actually mix the acid with the water, it is a chemical reaction and it does get quite hot. So I've got a litre of just ordinary old Alfred's distilled water, just battery top up water. That's not very expensive, it's about £2.50 for one of these 5 litres, but I've got a litre measured out into that. And in case you don't know, you always mix acid to water. So the water, the litre of water goes in first. You will notice I am wearing gloves because this is burny, and I've got a tub of water down there in case I have any accidents. This is the acid that I buy. Probably can read that label, not quite sure, but I'll get this off of eBay at the moment. I've got a feeling it's going to get hard to get hold of this. I think they're going to restrict this soon because of these nutters going around throwing acid in people's faces. Alright, so simply I've put the litre of water in there, the distilled water. I'm just going to put a bit more water in the sink now. Because the reaction with this and the water when you mix it up gets very hot, and there is a possibility that the plastic container I do this in could melt and split because it gets so hot, not through the acid melting it but because of the heat. So I'm just going to stand, put it at arm's length and mix this in with the distilled water. And that's it. And the acid you buy, this is motorbike battery acid. I think it's about 12-13 quid for a litre. I did buy 2 last time. I've just bought this because I don't say I think it's going to get hard to get hold of. Always wear your gloves though, because it is burning. It will burn you. And I don't really know what this means, but it says it's 37% concentration on it. And anything you read says you need about 15 to 20% for anodising. So half and half should make it 18.5% in my book, and it's always worked for me, so I'm happy with that. Typical, I've got something itchy on my face because I'm messing about with acid. Right, and that's as simple as that. To mix up your acid and water. Right, next thing we'll do a bit of anodising. Right, so this is the bit I'm going to be anodising and dyeing. I've made up this. This is an aluminium bar with a little threaded end with a nut, an aluminium nut on it. You can only put aluminium or lead in your acid bath when you're doing this. I've scrubbed this. There's no shortcut to this. You've got to scrub the thing till it's really, really clean. The better finish you get on it, the better finish you'll get when it's anodised. Anodising doesn't cover anything up. I mostly do this purely to dye them, just to make them look a bit snazzier and to give them a little bit of an harder coat. And this little contraption I made, it's got an hole in it which I'll suspend on a bit of copper rod across the top of the bath, and it doesn't go in the bath, and then put the electrode on the top of that to make the circuit. So let's go and drop it in the acid. Right, so here's the acid bath out of the sink and on the bench. This is my part. You try not to touch this at all once you've cleaned it. So I only handle it by the bit I'm suspending it in. And there's the little copper rod that I just used to dangle it across, so that it's just sitting, floating about in the bath. And then the part you're plating, not plating, sorry, the part you're anodising becomes the anode. So the positive goes on there, and conversely the lead plate becomes the cathode, so the negative goes onto the lead plate in the bath. It's pretty much the opposite of plating. So I've just got a 12 volt battery charger up here. I'll just show you that. Right, so this is the battery charger that I use. It's just a bog standard battery charger. You do need a bog standard battery charger. If you try to use a very modern battery charger, they generally will recognise that it's not on a battery and it won't work. So you've got to have the 12 volts coming across it. So I'll switch him on. And you can see the needles jumped across to about 3 amps. And if we come down to the actual bath, you might be able to see that. You can see it bubbling up there. The anode is bubbling away, and that should be doing its job. And the fumes are coming off it as well. Now you do get quite a lot of fumes, so you want to do this in a very well ventilated place. Unfortunately my workshop isn't that ventilated, even if I've got the door open. But my dust extraction does go outside, so I'll just put a nozzle from the dust extractor over that and keep that there with the extractor going while it's anodising. And for a part that big, I'd normally leave it in there for about 45 minutes. So we'll come back in 45 minutes and see how it's got on. Right, it's been in there about 45 minutes now, so I'm going to turn it off. Now there is a safety point to notice here. You should always turn the power off to the battery charger before you unclip your electrodes, in case there's a spark, because I think some of the stuff that comes up from here is flammable. So that's it. I'll just rinse that under the tap. Don't need any more wire in here. This is the dye. I'll just put that in there just to warm it up a little bit. I just think it takes a little bit better if you warm it up and give it a little swidgel. Make sure all the crystals are done. And then just immerse it in the dye. Give it a stir about. Like I say, make sure all the crystals are now you can see that on the camera. It's starting to take. It starts to take it straight away. But I'm just going to leave that one sitting in the dye for about 10-15 minutes, maybe a bit longer, and then put it in the boiling water to seal it. Right, so I've had it in the dye for a little while. You can see that that's dyed quite nicely. I'm just going to stick it back in there, take the lid off of. I've just got some distilled water that's all stained, where I just use it to rinse it off. That's the colour of it. So the next stage is just to put it in some boiling water and that will seal it. So I've got this water on my hot plate now. Put that in there. You will lose some colour when you seal it. I don't know if you can see the difference in that. It's negligible, but so that goes in there, and then I'll just turn that down to a simmering heat and leave it in there for half hour or an hour. Pull it out and then it will be done. Right, well, it's been cooking long enough, so it's a bit warm, so I'm just going to dunk it in this bath of water, cool it down a bit. Okay, put the tail. Now, there's a slight problem with this one, which isn't a bad thing to tell you. This, wherever your electrodes are touching, won't anodise, and because I pushed this on here too hard and it was up against this shoulder, around there where that was touching the shoulder hasn't anodised. So that's something to be mindful of. Wherever your electrode's touching, anodising will not take place. But other than that, it's alright. Always seems to get a little bit like a dusty scum on it when it's first dry and it's still quite warm. But once that's washed and cleaned up, that'll be fine. Shame about that. That's me being a twat. Right, I'll give it a clean up and then I'll show you that, and I'll show you one that I've done before which was very highly polished, just to give you an idea of the difference and the difference in colour depth. Alright, so this is the one we just did, with a little bit of a polish up, just a scrub with some Sulfiga and a little scourer. I mean, that is particularly the colour I wanted for this one, but this was a different dye and I did prepare this one. This had a much more polished finish before I started anodising it. But that's the sort of thing you can do. Easy anodising at home.